4K, 240 Hz, 0.03 millisecond response time, OLED, HDR, variable refresh rate with G-Sync. I don't see how a monitor could have a better spec sheet than this. This is a monitor that leaves not a single box unchecked. It possesses every single high-end spec, everything you'd want for productivity and play. There is simply nothing better on the market, and I don't think there will be for a very long time until the next great evolution beyond OLED displays. Given that at its core this is a gaming monitor, that is of course where we should begin. This thing is unbelievable. Especially for me, coming from a 4K IPS, only 60 Hz display, there's a fluidity to this that I just cannot explain. Everything is so clean, everything looks so sharp, and even when you're not playing at the full 240 Hz, if you don't get 240 FPS, it still feels unbelievable with the variable refresh rate, as the monitor's Hertz is constantly adjusting to what the game is outputting. I know that none of this is new, but the way everything works together so incredibly on this monitor is really something that you have to see firsthand. For years with OLED, burn-in has always been a really big concern, but ASUS has gone a really long way to mitigate this, and from what we've seen with the recent displays, it's really a non-issue anymore. Between the automatic screensaver that they've implemented that dims the screen when there's no motion for a few minutes to reduce the stress on the panel, pixel cleaning that happens every time it shuts off, and a reminder that comes up if you haven't cleaned for over 8 hours of extended use, and then the auto logo brightness that will take a really bright object on screen and dim it a little bit if it stays in the same spot. And then lastly, screen move, which slightly moves pixels around in an imperceivable way to make sure there is no immediate burn-in. They have done a great job to completely remove this fear, and it all works really well in practice. Another concern that a lot of people have when it comes to productivity on OLED display is something called text fringe due to the sub-pixel layout of OLED. What you have to realize is as the pixel density goes up, for example on a 4K monitor, the noticeability of this goes down a lot. The only way I was able to see this was when I put my eye basically right up to the display with white text on a black background, and there is an ever so slight fringe around. But that is obviously not a real world use case, and it's not something you will ever notice from any normal viewing distance. If this was a 32-inch 1080p or 1440p model, I could definitely see there being more of a fringe issue, but again, that doesn't apply on a 4K panel. One more item to touch on while we're on the productivity area is the blooming you sometimes get when you go from a small white window up to a much bigger one where the screen will dim. In my testing, this was so minor, even with the mitigation feature turned off, and I know a lot of people make a big deal out of this, but it's something you get used to in literally 2 seconds, so if that's something that's on your list of concerns, I wouldn't really factor it in, as they've done a great job at keeping that to a minimum. The colors on this thing are just insane, and scenes like this really show that. The colors pop more than any other panel you've ever looked at. And when it comes to gaming, when you pair this with a capable machine, I don't really see how there could be a better experience with today's technology. When you sync the extremely high refresh rate with the nearly instant response time, which, by the way, has basically no lag in either direction, I assure you that no matter what you had, whether it was the top-end IPS or TN panel, which tends to have a better refresh rate, they are nothing compared to this. Even when you go from that 1 millisecond down to this 0.03 milliseconds, which is so ridiculous it's basically instant, there's just this level of fluidity that I cannot explain. Things are just truly real time. That's the only way that I can describe it to make it make even the least amount of sense. What's really incredible about this display is it's one that could handle any use case, in any kind of game. It has the high refresh rate and a good size for competitive gaming, And you could even decrease the overall screen space if you don't like the full 32 inches. And then when you switch over to something like a story-driven game, the colors and the OLED nature of the display just make it such an unbelievable experience. This is really a one display fits all solution. You no longer need a conventional television setup for those slower paced games and a really high-end monitor for the competitive atmosphere. This will do both very comfortably. And that's why it is such an easy recommend for me. I don't know anyone this wouldn't work for. I can't really think of any other product anywhere where that's the case. There's always trade-offs, but this really doesn't have one. The one unfortunate thing right now, like with every piece of modern tech, is that they are really hard to come by. It is sold out absolutely everywhere, but I assume that as more players come into the space and there's other options around this level, they'll be a little bit easier to acquire. But if you are looking for the best of the best, this is an easy recommend from me, and I highly recommend that you go to a local store that has one on display so you could see what this is like, because it's really unbelievable. I hope that you enjoyed this video and that you took something from it. If you did, please do like and subscribe. It helps me out so much, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next video. See ya.